Hi you guys, I'm Cassie and I'm going to be summarizing Chapter 7, Groups and Teams for you guys all today. I'm going to do my best. Feel free to follow along on the attached PowerPoint and let's just get right into this. Slide 2 is just the table of contents. You can go through that if you guys want, but we're just going to cut right to slide 3. But before we break down the types of groups and teams, we're going to briefly define each. What is a group and what is a team? So groups are 2 or more people who interact with each other. And the key word there is interact. If you're working next to each other, but you're not interacting and engaging, then you're not a group. Teams are a little bit different, where you're working on a common goal with each other. So they're defined as an interdependent collection of at least 2 individuals who are sharing that common goal, and you guys are working on that task together. And in teams, you share accountability. So all teams are groups, but not all groups are necessarily teams. You might be working and interacting, but not working on the same thing. All right, so let's just move along. The first type of group that we have is work groups, which are formal groups that are organized and formed by the organization itself. And you're doing work for the company. There's 2 types of work groups. A command group, which is a formal group that runs with the functional reporting leadership roles and relationships. So you've got a manager and so on. Whereas the other group is affinity groups, and that is composed of employees who are working on the same level as each other. And they meet to share those roles and responsibilities. Next, we've got teams. And there's a lot of different types of teams, and they're based on different members and different tasks. We've got functional teams, where members are coming from the same department. Cross-functional teams, where members are coming from different departments. Problem-solving teams, working to specifically solve problems. Then we've got, self-directed teams, where teams set their own goals and decide on how to pursue and attack those together as a team. Then we've got venture teams that operate separately to create and develop new business dealings like programs, products, designs, etc. And then virtual teams that are organized to communicate without having to be face-to-face. So geographically, they are working together, but they're connected using the internet. And then the global teams, which include having members from different countries. And then lastly, in the type of groups, we've got informal groups, which consist of friendship groups and interest groups. And those are pretty self-explanatory. Friendship, you guys are friends, you enjoy each other's company. Interest groups, you like to do the same things. And then you can turn interest groups into friendship groups. All right, so let's go ahead and move to slide 4, performance factors. There are 5 group performance factors that are used to determine productivity. The first is group composition. Are all the group members similar? Are they the same age? Do they have the same work experience, education experience? Are they culturally the same? The groups that share the commonalities are called homogeneous groups, and those tend to have less conflict. You guys are thinking along the lines of the same things and how that affects you, so you guys think similarly, which causes less conflict. As organizations are becoming more culturally diverse, this is becoming more important. So as leaders, we can understand where everybody's coming from and how they can communicate to avoid those communication problems. The second is group size, which can have an impact on performance. Understanding whether a small group would work better for you, a large group, that does come into play. And then the textbook describes something to look out for that's called social loafing, which is basically when certain people are in groups, they tend to do less work. They think they can just put that off on the other members of the group. It's going to get done anyways, and accountability is just harder to pinpoint in group settings. All right, so then the third factor is group norms. And this is helps determine the behavior that's expected in certain situations. So these norms reflect a standard or behavior that a group is setting for itself. An easy example is work attire. You wouldn't have a guy come into the office in a suit and then another guy come into the same office in board shorts. You kind of have those standards and norms established as the values of the group as a whole. All right, so then the fourth factor is group cohesiveness. How committed are you to the group and remaining together? Smaller size, frequent interactions, having clear goals, and having success are all factors that can increase cohesiveness. However, be careful because it can also be problematic. As you know, the more you just have unanimous decisions, you're not fostering that critical analysis. So you want to weigh the pros and cons of having a highly cohesive group. Lastly, is the fifth factor, we have informal leadership. And that's somebody who acts as a leader, but they're not formally designated as such. They can be assets if they got the best interest of the company at heart. If not, it can actually be detrimental and cause disruption. Okay, so now let's move on to slide 5, creating new groups and teams. Managers many times are going to have opportunities to form new groups and teams, and you want to know exactly the stages and how to build those and develop effective ones. So when developing smaller groups, there's a 4-stage process that usually takes place. One being mutual acceptance, also known as the forming stage, and this is just where you get to know each other. Second is the communication and decision-making stage, where members are discussing their feelings and they're agreeing on group goals and group roles. Who's doing what? Why are we doing it? What's the ultimate goal? 3 is motivational and productivity stage, where members are starting to help each other out as they work towards getting those tasks done. And lastly is the 4th stage, which is control and organization. Here, members are working together to accomplish the overall goal, and they're becoming flexible to do whatever is best for the team. All right, so next on the same slide is understanding team performance factors. All right, so when your performance improves because of the use of teams, we can call this process gains. When it weakens, we call this process loss. But to better understand team performance, we want to ask the following questions. Do the members trust one another? Are they confident in one another? Are there clear roles established? All right, so now let's look quickly at the implementation process. We've got phase 1 is the startup phase, and that is after we've already made the decision to make the group. And this is just where we select the team members, prep them to work in teams, and train them. Then we've got phase 2, which happens usually about 6 to 9 months later, called the reality and unrest phase. This is where team members are starting to report troubles and frustrations, and then as leaders, you start to form and teams start to think of itself as teams. Then we enter the 3rd phase, which is called leader-centered teams phase. Then in the 4th phase, teams are becoming more tightly formed and more confident. And then by stage 5, which can take months or years, depending, you have mature teams that exceed goals. And this phase is called self-managing teams. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the next slide as we discuss management and teams. As a manager, you will want to get a better understanding for benefits and costs of the use of teams. Promote effective performance within team structures, and then you will want to identify and develop teamwork competencies. Okay, so now let's go to the 7th slide now as we move to the team opportunities and challenge leaders are faced with today. As teams become more common, these can become more challenging, and that is the managing of virtual teams and the increase of diversity within teams. So you're going to want to make sure that the lines of communication are open and that technology are there to support your team members. I'm actually on a remote team for my internship, and we have weekly video chats, and and our leaders assign those tasks. Each week we have those, and we just want to make sure that we're communicating with each other. But with heavily diverse and multicultural teams, leaders are presented with different challenges and advantages too when communicating with each other. So wanting to make sure, Western cultures are more direct with their messages. You just want to make sure that you are communicating in a way that's going to be effective for your team. And if you have a diverse team, making sure you communicate to get to everybody. Okay, so finally we've reached the 8th slide. We can go ahead and click over. It's just the discussion question that I left with you guys. I will leave you guys to that. Thank you guys so much for watching my slideshow and video. And then the last slide is just the reference page. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.